When I first moved to Whistle Creek, I was immediately taken in by the town's calm. Just an hour outside of Portland, yet it felt like a completely different world. Houses hidden among pine trees, birdsong drifting through the morning fog, and long conversations over coffee in the town square each evening. I thought I had finally escaped the city and found some kind of order. But order, well, that can be fragile, especially when people have their eyes on the same seat. I'm Elijah Mercer. I'm 34 years old. I work as a strategy specialist at Harbridge Collective, a tech-driven advertising agency. The Whistle Creek branch is small but rapidly growing. We stay tightly connected with the offices in Seattle, San Francisco, and lately, New York. My job is to generate ideas, design digital campaigns for brands, and sometimes deal with ridiculous egos. I've been with the company for about 4 years. When I started, there were only 2 other people in this office. Now we're a team of 18. My supervisors were happy with my performance. At least, they used to be. One morning, my manager Langley called me into his office. He looked at me over his glasses with that usual serious expression. "Seattle's looking for a new regional creative director. I've put your name forward, Elijah. Nothing's confirmed yet, but you're being considered. Be ready." A small spark lit up inside me. This was a big step. For the first time in my career, I was being considered for a senior role. I kept a straight face. "Thank you, Langley," I said. "I'm ready." Or at least, I thought I was. When I got back to my desk that day, Beaumont Crest turned to me with a sly grin. Beaumont. It took time to get used to that name. This was still the U.S., but I'd never met another Beaumont until him. He was charismatic, knew how to make eye contact, how to be everyone's friend. But behind his eyes there was always something else. There always had been. And I ignored it. "So," he said, "you planning to pitch campaigns in the Seattle rain?" His tone was light, joking, but his eyes were sharp. "Nothing's decided yet," I replied. "Just being considered." Let's hope you don't end up among the unconsidered," he muttered, turning back to his screen. Beaumont and I had never had a direct conflict, but we both knew we were competing for the same role. He was flashier, louder. I worked more behind the scenes, but in the past few years I'd stepped into the spotlight. My ideas turned into campaigns. Clients were happy. I think that bothered him. Whistle Creek is a small town. People see each other outside of work. We bump into each other at the local bar, the Branch and Bramble, or run into each other during weekend hikes. That weekend was no different. Beaumont was there, and so was Ruby, the new intern. The conversation went on. The beers kept coming. But I left early. Something felt off. Did I sense something was coming that night? Maybe, but the real storm hit 3 days later, when I came into the office. I logged into my computer, nothing. I couldn't access my email. The system had restricted my account. At first I thought it was a glitch, but then someone from IT showed up at my desk. "Mr. Mercer, Langley would like to see you." Right away. 100 possibilities ran through my head. But none of them were as real or as brutal as the truth. I was under investigation for allegedly sending confidential client data to an unauthorized email account. My mouth went dry. All I could say was, "What are you talking about?" When you're accused of something, especially something you know you didn't, your first instinct is to deny it. But even that denial can make you look more suspicious. That morning, as I sat across from Langley, my voice tried to sound steady, but my palms were drenched in sweat. "As per company policy, Elijah, we need to clarify the situation first," he said. There was a 2-page printout on his desk. He looked confident enough to shove those papers right into my line of sight. "It appears that last Friday night at 9:17 p.m., a file named Client Vault .temp zip was sent outside the company. The recipient address is your personal email." I frowned and leaned forward. My eyes scanned the text. Sure enough, it was my Gmail address, but I wasn't even on my laptop at that time. I'd paid some bills and started rewatching an old season of True Detective. I didn't even know what that file was, never saw it, never knew which folder it came from. I didn't do this, I said. I didn't send that file. Langley didn't take his eyes off me for several seconds. Then he pressed his lips together and opened a folder. I'd reviewed the access logs. A USB drive was inserted. The login matches the timestamp. Everything came from your computer. And there it was, that cold wave crashing down over me. Someone had set me up. But who? And how? Langley kept asking questions. I didn't have any answers. Just a few possibilities circling in my head, all pointing toward the same face. Beaumont. I was put on administrative leave. I wasn't allowed back in the office until the investigation concluded. The email from HR was polite, but the message was clear. Please return your company laptop, access badge, and all devices. 4 years, gone in a blink. All I wanted to do in that moment was disappear. I drove out of town, north toward Pineview Ridge. I stopped at the edge of a fog-covered lake far from anyone's eyes. I sat there, head in my hands, trying to figure out how this had happened. What I'd missed. And then I remembered. That Friday, Beaumont had asked to use my laptop for a quick presentation. His own laptop wasn't charging. Just 5 minutes, he'd said. He'd plugged in a USB, opened something. Yes, I remembered that. But it had felt so normal, so unremarkable. I hadn't paid attention. I hadn't realized what he was doing, what he could do. I didn't go back to the office the next day, but I made a call to Silas Monroe. Quiet guy, glasses, worked in IT, never drew attention. But he clearly knew what he was doing. I asked him one thing. Silas, you said a USB was inserted into my computer Friday night. Are you sure about the system time? The pause on the other end was heavy. The times are recorded based on the system clock, yeah, but if your computer's system time was manually altered, we'd only catch that by digging into the log files, the deep ones. That was something. Maybe even my first shot at getting out of this. A few days later, the air in Whistle Creek had turned colder. But people still talked, especially about me. Every time I walked into Red Fern Cafe, heads turned. In a small town, it doesn't matter if you're innocent. Once you're accused, eyes follow you. This isn't the kind of place where facts move fast. Rumors move faster. Truth takes its time. That morning, as I flipped through my notebook, something slipped out. A business card from Harbridge. On the back, someone had scribbled a note. The timestamp might have been altered. There are traces in the logs. I'm watching. SM. Silas. The quiet kid was quietly tracking something down. For me, I may have been the victim in this story, but I wasn't going to feel like one. I wasn't going to drown in whispers. I had to find my voice. That night I made a decision. I wouldn't stay silent. I'd take the next step. I'd uncover the truth. And if someone had set me on fire, I'd bring that fire right back to them. Time moves slow in Whistle Creek, but rumors travel at light speed. People might believe you're innocent, but that won't stop them from whispering over their coffee. Still, someone sent that file, didn't they? So I didn't stay quiet. I felt like if I did, I'd drown. I held on to Silas's little note like it was a lifeline, following the only thread I had. Someone was behind this, and the details nobody else seemed to notice. They might just lead me to the truth. My meeting with Silas was secret. We met in an old abandoned rail shack outside town called Echo Bend. It sounds dramatic, I know, but I also knew the company tracked everything, even conversations. Silas, despite his age, was proof of how close paranoia and brilliance can be. He showed up with a USB drive and his own laptop. He didn't look at me as he spoke. There's a user login in the logs from 9:17 p.m. that night, but I found a discrepancy in the system clock. The only way that happens is if someone manually changed the time through the BIOS. And here's the thing. Your IP wasn't active on the network during that window. He paused. So the computer showed it was you, but you weren't actually connected. I held my breath. Silas turned his screen toward me and pointed to a single line. scrolling among the black background and code. External device USB 476C1. Inserted by unknown process. 2043. System time reset. Blurry format. The system time had been altered. Whoever did this either had IT-level skills or was someone on the inside who knew the system well. I can't tell you who it was, Silas said. But there was another device on the network that night, not registered. I got the MAC address. It's an Apple tablet. Serial ends in 9FB1. My blood ran cold. I knew that number. Beaumont's iPad, the black-cased one he always used during internal meetings. The only device in the office that was never formally registered. The next morning I went to the Harbridge office. My access card didn't work, but no one could stop me from sitting in the lobby. I waited. About an hour later, Langley's door opened. We locked eyes. This time I spoke first. We need to talk. I have something you need to see. He let me in. Shut the door. His voice was firmer this time. Elijah, we asked you to stay out of this. It's company policy. I didn't respond. I pulled out my laptop, inserted the USB, and opened the report Silas had given me. Then I looked him straight in the eye. This data is from your IT team. The system clock was altered. The IP doesn't match. The MAC address belongs to an unregistered tablet. I don't know who it is, but I think you already do. Langley stared at the report for a long time. His lips were pressed tight. The lines in his face seemed deeper. Then he removed his glasses and turned to me. You won't say a word. Not yet. I'll take it from here. I know who it is. That evening, Whistle Creek was as quiet as ever. But for the first time, I felt a sliver of hope. I wasn't alone anymore. Langley knew the truth, and I knew he'd act silently. But not every battle is fought in silence. And sometimes when the truth starts to come out, the ones who scream the loudest are the innocent. The next morning, my system access was restored. But that wasn't the only message waiting for me. There was an email from Beaumont. Short, cold, one line. Nice move, Elijah. But the game's not over. When I read Beaumont's message, what I felt wasn't anger. We were past that now. It wasn't a threat, it was a reminder. He was admitting the game, savoring the fact that he'd seen my move. There was arrogance in that line, the confidence of a man who still believed his plan was running smoothly. But I wasn't the victim anymore. This story wouldn't be written by anyone else. Langley didn't call me that day. But when I got to the office, my workstation was active again. People avoided looking at me. The whispers had gone quiet, but tension still hung in the air. While grabbing coffee in the tiny break room, I caught Ruby's eyes. She squeezed her cup, then quietly walked out. Ruby, one of the shadows orbiting around Beaumont. When she first joined, we worked on a few presentations together. But since then, she'd slipped under his wing. She watched. She listened. Always innocent on the surface. But in this company, innocence had become a rare currency. Around midday, when no one was watching, I got a message from Silas. Beaumont's backing up files to an external drive. He stays late. Check the CCTV. I didn't have access to the security system, but I texted Langley. Not long after, I was called into the conference room. Langley was already inside, calm and composed as always. He turned his laptop toward me. A surveillance video was playing. Beaumont. Friday night, around 8:40 p.m., alone in the office. At my desk, plugging in a USB. The screen wasn't fully visible, but his movements at the keyboard were clear. Then he moved to the server room, working on the main access panel. 10 minutes later, he walked out. That same night, an unregistered device appeared on the network, the infamous tablet. Langley took a deep breath. This is enough for me to initiate an internal audit. But official procedures move slow. You know that. I know, I said. But time's not on our side. Beaumont has strong connections in other branches, especially New York high-level people. He plays politics. He'll throw you under the bus if he gets the chance. Be careful. That evening I spotted Ruby at Red Fern Cafe. She was alone, flipping through a stack of folders. I walked up, but before I could say anything, she spoke. I've heard everything. But Elijah, Beaumont didn't just target you. He's been using all of us. I narrowed my eyes. What do you mean? He asked me to copy over some presentation files. Said it was for backup. Then he presented them as his own work. He's done the same to other interns. None of us spoke up. There was a pause. Then she lowered her head. I want to help you, but I have to be careful. That night I sat at my desk and laid everything out. Ruby's confession, Silas's data. It was clear now. Beaumont hadn't just come after me. He'd climbed the ranks by undermining the entire department, like a snake using every gap to slither higher. I wouldn't wait for his next move. I'd make the first one. I came up with a plan. Risky, yes. But with people like him, silence is surrender. I messaged Langley. Just one sentence. I'm going to prove Beaumont's been keeping internal comms on his own network. If I have to, I'll access his computer directly. Langley's reply was short. If you do that, everything changes. Some decisions put you on a path you can't come back from. When I messaged Langley that evening, I knew there was no turning back. I wasn't just trying to prove my innocence anymore. I was going on the offensive. And when you strike, you wait for the moment they're most vulnerable. I had Beaumont's routines memorized by now. Friday nights, he stayed late at the office. By then, the place was usually deserted. Security was practically asleep outside of their routine patrols. And most importantly, he wouldn't even be in Whistle Creek. That night, he was attending a reception in nearby Greystone Hills. Ruby messaged me. He's leaving at 6 p.m. today. Leaves his computer on. Might be using remote access. The plan was in motion. 6:45 p.m. I returned to the office. My access card had been temporarily reactivated by Langley. The building was quiet. I walked through dim corridors. Outside the windows, it was pitch black. The silence of Whistle Creek at night could chill your bones, but I didn't have time to be afraid. Beaumont's office wasn't locked. I opened the door, stepped inside. His computer was on, sitting on the desk. The screen was locked but not asleep. I pulled out the USB drive. Silas had loaded it with a small custom script. Once plugged in, it began extracting system logs, connection history, backup files, and clipboard caches. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Every second carried the risk of being caught. My hands were sweating, but within minutes it was done. The files were copied. I left the computer as it was, closed the door, and headed out. As I walked through the office, one thing caught my eye, a single red light blinking faintly in the dark. The security camera. I needed to be sure Silas had blacked out the system that night. The next morning I met up with Silas. I handed over the USB. He wasn't smiling, but he was focused. No traces. Files came through clean, and yeah, what we were looking for is here. We'd accessed Beaumont's personal notes. He used a digital journaling app that wasn't synced to the company's secure systems off the radar. The file names read Control Rubber 1 Docs, Agent Log Docs, NYC Memo Stratter Final, and a folder named Leverage. We opened it. Inside were screenshots, audio clips, draft emails, even falsified documents. All of it assembled to undermine several employees and build his own rise. My name, Elijah Mercer, appeared several times in bold. Next to it, a note. If he causes trouble, these images alone are enough. Keep my name out of it. The groundwork is laid. This wasn't manipulation anymore. It was a crime. I reached out to Langley, transferred the files to his computer. He watched quietly, then leaned back in his chair. This isn't internal anymore. We're talking federal. But at that point, I didn't want to stop, because this man hadn't just played with my career. He'd played with my name, my future, my character. I wasn't just trying to clear my name anymore. I wanted to shove the truth into the light so no one could look away. Langley took off his glasses, closed the folder. The audit starts Monday, but take my advice, stay quiet this weekend. Do nothing. Don't confront him. Tomorrow I'll talk to him, not you. But I didn't take Langley's advice. Sunday morning, 9:12 a.m. I waited for Beaumont in the small park at the center of Whistle Creek. I knew he'd be there. He took a walk every Sunday morning. Always the same coffee, the same pace. I stood in the shadows. When he came into view, I stepped forward and said his name. He froze. "It's over," I said. "We have everything. The files. The records. We know what you did." He smiled. "You think you know something?" I didn't reply. I pulled the USB from my pocket and held it up. Then I dropped it to the ground. "You're not just my problem anymore. Monday morning, everyone's going to find out." He looked down, then up at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. And something else. Anger. "I'm going to destroy you." "Too late," I said. "I already lost everything. But your fall is just beginning." Monday morning, Whistle Creek kept its usual quiet under the morning sun. But inside the Harbridge building, there was no silence. At exactly 8:05 a.m., Langley walked into the executive floor. With him were three others. One was the company's Eastern Regional Audit Lead, another the corporate legal advisor, and the third, an external auditor from Independent Compliance. That morning, faces were cold and unreadable. Beaumont hadn't arrived yet. When he did, he was immediately called into the conference room. Ruby was already there. Silas was there. And me? I was sitting right across from him. When Beaumont entered, he still wore the mask of pride. His shirt was pressed, hair neatly combed. He'd been lying for so long he'd built his own version of the truth. But this time he had no story left to tell. Langley spoke. "Mr. Beaumont, the allegations against you are backed by extensive documentation, both internal company data and records, obtained from your personal device, have been submitted for review. Before we take your statement, we're obligated to offer you two things: the right to remain silent and the right to request representation." Beaumont didn't speak at first. Then he looked at me. For a moment I saw surprise in his eyes, then a smirk. "This is it? You believed a desperate intern story?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to anymore. Silas projected the screen. The leverage folder retrieved from Beaumont's computer appeared. Ruby confirmed the files. IT logs were displayed, connection timestamps, USB access history, the tablet's MAC address. Beaumont's defense collapsed. That afternoon, an internal announcement was circulated from Harbridge headquarters. Department Director Alan Beaumont has been relieved of his duties pending a formal disciplinary investigation. Word spread that Beaumont left the building a few hours later, through the back door. As for me, I didn't feel triumph. Victory didn't exist, only the silence that follows when the dust settles. But at least now I could hold my head high. Langley called me into his office. He stood up as I walked in and reached out his hand. "I'll be honest with you, Elijah. I didn't pay much attention to you in your first days here. But what you've done these past 2 weeks, that's the kind of courage most people take whole careers to find. So what happens now?" I asked. "Beaumont's gone. The files have been turned over to corporate counsel. Your name is completely cleared. And," he paused, pulled out an envelope from his desk. "If you want, you can stay. Full-time. Strategy department. We've got big things coming next quarter. We need minds like yours." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "I'll need to think about it." "Fair enough. But whatever you decide, you've left a mark here, Elijah. A real one." Oh. The next morning, I walked through the streets of Whistle Creek. People no longer looked at me with whispers. Some nodded quietly, others met my gaze. Doubt had been replaced by a quiet kind of respect. I sat on a bench sipping my coffee. The sun was just beginning to rise. I pulled out my phone. A message appeared. From Ruby. "It's over," I replied. No, it's just beginning.